Thanks for having us here. Thanks everybody for joining. I'm Matthew Goldfarb, and Petra Page Mann is my partner. We have Fruition Seeds, which is in the Finger Lakes of New York. And we grow about 60% of our varieties that we offer on our farm. And then we either source the rest of our seeds from other regional growers or produce seed through this model that I'm going to share with you guys called custom collaboration that we've been developing the last couple of years. And custom collaboration is an approach that we're taking where we're working with market growers to identify gaps in seed needs and then work with them to develop those varieties specifically for those farms. So I'm going to talk to you about how that collaboration works, look at some of the farms, some of the crops we work on. But really our two goals with custom collaboration is to increase or reduce the costs in seed production and seed breeding, so increase our efficiencies in the economics around seed development, and also build a stronger regional seed network so that there are more of us as seed companies, as breeders, as farmers, as eaters that are involved in the seed system so that we have a more open, moving dialogue to make sure that we're developing the varieties that we need. So in custom collaboration, there's four main elements, and I'm going to try and touch on them as we go through. And first it's assessing what are the seed needs. Then it's kind of coordinating who does what through that process. Then it's actually carrying out the work. And finally, what is the exchange? Does the farmer get seed? What do we do with the seed? How does that exchange actually transpire once you have seed at the end? And this is San Marzano paste tomato. I'm sure a lot of you have grown it. And this was identified by one of our growers. They've been working with San Marzano for over a decade, and they have a really good market for it. And they've tried different strains. They've tried the Gigante, and they've tried from different seed companies. And what they found was there's a strain that they like, but that they're seeing a huge amount of variation in fruit size and plant yield. So they were able to identify that, communicate with us what they're looking for, and then we just come up with a protocol of, they do about 100 plants a year. So they did, and you can see the top ones, I mean, it's a little bit staged, but the tops are probably 30% of the population is throwing ones that are that size, smaller plant architecture, smaller fruits. And then there was, out of 100 plants, I think there were 17 or 18 plants that had larger fruits, larger plants, heavier yields. So they went through and did a selection on early maturity. So they were flagging, because it's in their fields, they're looking at them every day for early maturity. And then once they started getting to the harvest stage, we walked through the fields with them, and then we're looking at fruit quality, fruit size, fruit yield, and we're able to isolate and identify 17 plants out of that population. But they don't want to deal with the seed side of it, even though tomatoes are really simple seed. Their minds and their production is just grow the produce, get it to market, keep moving. So we then, once everything was flagged, we harvested the seed, processed the seed, cleaned it, tested it, gave them back that seed. So that's part of the exchange, where they didn't have to do anything extra on their farm as far as seed work, and we didn't have to grow out a large population of produce that we had no use for or marketable need for. So that's kind of how it can start to work. And then
the size of your population, that was 100 plants?
That was about 100 plants. And we'll just keep doing this, and what we'll do on our side as a seed company, eventually we'll release that seed as a strain that we've been working on with this farm. We'll do that once we have seen enough generations and seen it trialed in their farm and our farm, where we feel like it's consistently a better San Marzano than is available through what we've seen from other populations. But in the meantime, they'll get the seed every year and continue to work with it. And these are some of our collaborator farmers, and I'll kind of quickly just talk about some of the unique characteristics. But what we're looking for is experience in the marketplace, experience with specific crop types, scale, so they need to be large enough. And because we want them to help direct us what their needs are, we kind of have to be able to assess with them, is that an actual seed need, a genetic need, or is it a cultural practice that we can help them just say, well, have you tried planting this way or on this spacing, or different timing or fertility issues. So the more experienced they are with crops and with production and with their markets, the more they're able to see, no, it's a genetic population issue, or I've been working with all of these different strains and still can't find one that really fits this need that I have. And these farms range anywhere from 3 acres in vegetable production all the way up to about 25 acres. And they all serve different markets, which is really valuable for us as a seed company, because some of them, like Zaid and Haifa in the middle right, they do about 7 acres primarily in high tunnels, and they're serving New York City high-end chefs. They have a very specific clientele, a very specific flavor profile that they're looking at. And then somebody like Nathaniel Thompson in the lower left does about 25 acres of primarily mixed greens and root crops, and wholesales a lot of his produce. So he's looking a lot on yield qualities, storage qualities, early maturity, and some cold tolerance in greens. So all of these growers have pretty specific niches that they fill, and they're all really committed to seed production. They don't want to be involved in every step of seeds because they're produce farmers, and that's where their bread is. But they see the need for seeds. They've worked with lots of different seed companies on different levels. Some of them have saved seed at different points, but they want better seeds, so they're invested in the process. Our collaborator process isn't us going to farms and saying, hey, don't you want a better tomato, or don't you want a better cabbage? It's more them coming to us and this continual dialogue of them identifying what their needs are and then finding out how do we develop a relationship to produce that with them. And these are a bunch of the crops that we work on. Anything that has an S in it means that we're working on multiple varieties, and you can see there's a pretty big range. A lot of biennials, which is has been great for us in that when we work with biennials and market growers, it doesn't impact their production system. So we don't have to tell them to space things differently, to plant something at a different time. They can just go ahead and grow their crop. We can select with them, store those roots or plants for the winter, take those plants, plant them back at our farm, depending on how we coordinate isolations, and do the seed production off of their farm. So it doesn't change any of their rotations, it doesn't change their planting schedules. And as I talk about some of the challenges, that's one of the things we'll get into, but biennials have been really successful for us to work with market growers on. And this is, so when it works really well is when we all have this common vision, this common goal of what we're trying to accomplish, because then it allows us to focus resources, and that's where kind of the economics come in. If the market grower is doing what they're specialized in the production side, and we're doing what we're specialized in on the seed side, nobody's extending themselves into an area where they have to develop new skill sets, add new labor costs, new infrastructure, equipment. And this is another population that we're working with of a red chard. And again, I think there was a population of about 2,000 plants, and it was a farm, Blue Heron Farm, and this is the range of red chard that they're getting from their ruby red. And you can see it's all over the place. And these 4 on the right are what Robin is looking for. It's what she's identified she really likes, what her customers really like. So it has to do with a broader stem, the brightness of the red, but a rumpled green leaf rather than a dark red leaf. And then we also wanted to look at plant architecture and shape, and she really wanted upright plants because she noticed over generations that she has more vigor, she gets higher yields, she can plant stuff closer together, so she wanted an upright plant with that type of leaf. And out of that population of 2,000, we were able to flag maybe about 120. So again, she's growing them the way she normally grows them. We're doing a fall selection on them. It didn't impact her production at all. We didn't have to grow all of this chard with nothing to do with it, and then can start making these selections and move the seed in the direction that she needs. And this is another example of kind of how we all work together, and as these conversations develop, new opportunities are identified. So this is a lot of our projects are also hybrids that our farms are concerned are going to be dropped or have already been dropped, and they had an established market for, and now they're kind of scrambling of how do they fill that slot. So this is a Kuza style squash Magda that was a hybrid that was just dropped this year, and Zaid kind of in the middle with his selfie on the tractor had started to establish a really strong market for that and getting a lot of following, and all of a sudden it was dropped. But because of his production system, he couldn't do Peppos on his farm for seed production, where Nathaniel, who's another collaborator we work with, had an isolation, and he knew it was an important crop for Zaid and something we were interested in working on, so he kind of offered us isolation space. And Michael Mazurek is part of a lot of our work as well. He's a breeder, a public plant breeder at Cornell University, who's a squash breeder. So all of us now are participating in this population where we're kind of coordinating the efforts. Zaid identified the need, we're coordinating the efforts. Nathaniel's doing the primary growing, can sell off that fruit through his CSA. We're doing the breeding and selection work on his farm, and Michael is helping kind of mentor us, but we'll be doing the winter populations in one of his greenhouses so that we can get multiple generations and kind of speed.
For an OP or hybrid?
We're aiming for an OP. Yep. So we actually have the winter generation already started in the greenhouses up at Cornell. And then a lot of this, so we've been doing this for just 2 years now, and it's very much in developmental. Oh, 5 minutes, great, perfect. Very much in developmental stage, but how does it work? There's a lot of work that farmers are doing. There's a lot of work that we're doing. And then ultimately we end up with sometimes we end up with lots of seed. Sometimes we have failed crops and end up with no seed, and people have made investments along the way. And it really ranges on the range of relationships and the types of farms we work with. We have one farm where we have an MOU with, a memorandum of understanding, just the way they're structured. They wanted it much more clean and written out with those types of details and agreements. A lot of it is handshakes and just continual dialogue. The primary mode of exchange is seed exchange, where they're committing land, labor, space to the crop. We're committing time, energy, resources to the seed crop, and that they get back as much seed as they need for the following year. And then in exchange for what they contributed, and what we get for contributing is the remaining percentage of that seed, that if it's a seed we want to ultimately offer in our seed catalog, then we produce seed more economically, can then sell off that seed. So that's our side of it. There are some crops that we just outright purchase. There's a shallot project we're working on and a leek project, and even some onions where we'll just buy them from the market grower, even though it's been an ongoing conversation of how the process works and what the selection is. They allow us to kind of make those selections, purchase them, and then they purchase the seed, whatever generation of seed we're in, whether it's just improving an OP or breeding a new variety. They commit to buying that seed back from us, so we know we have at least a start of a revenue stream as we're breeding these new varieties. And then we've started to do kind of these balance sheets that I don't have one to show right now, but it's just a simple spreadsheet that shows who did what, how much land was committed, how much time, energy in general, components of the process. So then we can just see, well, you gave, if it works really well if you're doing multiple crops with a farm, because one farm may put a lot of energy into one crop and no energy into another crop, and then you can see how does their seed versus labor time space work out as a return. And this is a Calabos cabbage that we're working on, and it's an OP cabbage. It's a great fall cabbage, really great flavor, good color, and the population, like a lot of OP cabbages, is all over the place. And we're going for a wide hip, pointy tip, and a smaller plant frame. A lot of them will throw these really large plants with small heads, so we're going for a more compact plant. But that's another one that our farms have identified with us. And so some of the advantages are just really large populations. This is a farm we were working with on a sorrel radish. We gave them about a pound of seed that we had grown out the prior year. They planted out 10,000 row feet for their CSA, and then we went in and graded them as they started to harvest them, so we could look for vigor, size, competition, and it allows us to work with much larger populations than as a seed company, and not have all of this waste in the product stream. Other advantages are just helping us as a small company identify seed needs. It puts us on a lot of farms at all stages of their growth cycle, so we're hearing from them all their conversations and what they need. And then a lot of the challenges are just being spread out, having to be on a lot of farms, having to coordinate priorities between produce and seed production, disease control, weed pressure, and just helping identify, is it actually a seed need or is it a cultural practice, are a lot of the challenges that we run into. But it's something we're super, super excited about. It's a part of our work that we continue to put more and more energy into, because every conversation we have with farms just kind of, and as we start new projects, just leads into the next project. And this is a striped pepper that we just started working on. That's a cross between a bunch of different peppers, but it wouldn't have happened if we hadn't been on multiple farms working with them on different issues, different crops, and starting to hear and see what are they excited about, what do they need, how do we start collaborating and work together more closely. So this was kind of a dropped breeding project that we had seen, and then started sharing it with some of our other collaborators, where now we're going to have multiple farms working on breeding this pepper kind of in a participatory process. So it creates this type of dialogue that if we were doing the seed work by ourselves, we would never have, and opportunities we'd never see. So that's the gist of it.